Neat Nation, what's up? Hope you guys are having a good night. Of course, hopefully you know me by now, but I'm Drew, and with me is not Drew, obviously.
Not Drew.
So that may
Brian.
just be what we call Brian henceforth, is just not Drew. That's his
I think it's
new
much
name.
easier, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's in podcasts and shows, there's always some person with some kind of dopey name. Right. And so instead of giving you this random, weird, odd nickname,
I'd rather be not Drew than Dopey Brian.
Yeah.
So that's 100%.
I mean, we got Droopy, we can have Dopey. That kind of works. But yeah, that's not flattering.
No,
not flattering at all. All right, squad. Well, thanks for joining us. We got 36 people and people storming in right now, which is awesome. We're going to be tasting some Dusties, but will also be a live podcast recording. So Brian and I've got separate audio running here as we continue to record content for. If anybody's a doctor wants to tell me what's wrong with my lungs, I'd appreciate that. But anyway, we're recording content for the Entry Proof podcast, which is now live. You guys can go to entryproofpodcast.com and check out our brand new website. There's still my website, droopywhiskey.com, where you can just click through the videos, but also the YouTube channel is great for that. But that Entry Proof podcast will be the home for this kind of stuff. And so you can go on there right now, actually, and check out the episode we just dropped with Danny Calloway from Bardstown Bourbon Company. Danny is the Vice President of Hospitality and Product Development. And we had a great time hanging out with Danny in their vintage spirits library, which I wanted to live in that room. I don't know about you, Brian, but I could have stayed there forever.
It was a sight to see. I mean, that I was so... Like, I tried to get some clips of you capturing the room, and then you were capturing the room, and then we set up to go. I bet I only saw like 100 bottles that were in there. I wasn't even looking around while we were recording. I was so dedicated to recording. So
I was distracted. Maybe you're a more noble podcaster than I, but I was all into the room. I was taking over.
He made a thing. He posted that he was working on the next thing that he was talking about on the podcast, but he didn't have samples for. And I was like, oh yeah, here we go. It's going to be delicious. And he told me, come on back down and sample. So, nice. I can't believe that by the time, we're here on Thursday, I still haven't been back down there. To be fair, I tried to go on Tuesday to pick up a Discovery 4 if they had them. And I went down to Bardstown and found out that they were closed Monday and Tuesday. Did not happen.
Well, you were also teased that there might be Willett Family Estate down there too, and there was not.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was messaging you. I mean, you're now, I guess, looped into like
all
my
things.
alert network. So now you'll know when things are popping off, even though you're not in town to acquire them.
Right. Hey, Drew, there's Family Estate at the gift shop. I'm like, okay, well, I'm in Milwaukee, so that's great.
That's right. Not going to do you any good here.
Nah. All right. Got Kyle Ramage back in the chat. That's awesome.
Kyle, I installed a new router to give my signal a little bit of a bump. So
we needed that.
I'm not gonna knock on wood and all of that. I don't want to jinx it, but let's hope.
Brian, it's official. You are definitely not Drew in the chat. That is your name. It is what it is. All right. Just ground rules squad. Like I said, we're gonna kick off the recording, so we have to do the dopey intro again. But if you guys want to throw questions in the chat, we will still periodically stop and hit chat questions. We may leave those in the final podcast because I will say we're recording live. So if you want to make sure that I see it, at me, make sure you go at Drew P Whiskey. If you really want to make sure I hit it, and you want to support the channel, throw that super chat on there. That would be swell. Brian and I are talking about alternative measures for supporting the channel, given that we're doing a lot more content, starting the podcast. We may do a Patreon. We'll see. Getting our recording equipment is expensive. We still want to get better.
I want to take a poll in the chat too. So Kyle Ramage did just message and he texted me. He said, "Love the Wee Glen. What are your all's thoughts on the Weeglins?
The Weeglin, you mean
I want. Do you have any of those Weeglins?
I do. I've got one from Heaven Hill. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, yeah, I mean, they do when you just want a tiny little something. They work well for flights.
I love
it's
them,
hard
man.
to get your nose in there. But
I'm a big fan. It seems like you have a large pour, even if you have like 1/16 of an ounce. So
yeah, squad. Let us know. What kind of dank merch would you like to see? Kyle Ramage says to do Patreon. So thanks for that feedback, Kyle. But I need a little bit more warm up before we get into our tasting, which we got to introduce our tasting. So let me pour, and then we will officially kick off the podcast. I'm sure there's something fun you can use from that little intro to use as a cold open, Brian.
Maybe not everything has to be a cold open. Sometimes we just like hot.
Just go
like a hot
right
shower.
in there.
I don't know how many
foreplay, just right into
shower.
the podcast. Yeah.
Nation can tell you do you like cold showers or hot showers? I'm going to assume they say hot. Maybe some people just want a hot intro.
I'm warm. I do not like well, it depends. If I just mowed the lawn in the summertime, a cool shower is okay.
I still don't even think then I want a cold shower.
Yeah.
Or a cool shower. Lightly cool.
Sure. Right. Yeah, not cold. I know that there's this big movement right now where people are doing ice baths, like they're raising their stoke via cold exposure, and that to me sounds like an absolute nightmare. Like I
do think I would do the polar bear plunge, but I haven't.
Can't do it. I'm out on the
I try it.
Icy plunge.
What if we got support from Nation to do the polar bear plunge? You're telling me you wouldn't do it?
No,
if Nation really just into it?
Depends on what the definition of support was. What I will say that I would do the polar plunge before I would do the one chip challenge. I'm not into gimmicks. Like, hey,
I don't love super hot stuff, and I don't love dumb hot stuff. I did a dumb hot sauce before. I forget what it was. And I thought I was seeing my body from above it. It was dangerous.
Yeah. Roger in the chat says this live is way better than the last one with Brian and the lag. So and
I saw a comment too talking about the camera. So right now I'm just using computer. It's just for ease of facilitation.
Wow, who's being picky right now? This is a live podcast. Like you guys are lucky to even.
It's not even about being picky. It's not even about being picky. We want to provide you all with excellent looking and quality stuff. So
HD, yeah.
I'd love to show you my whiskey room, but it's right below my kids' room, and so at the time that we record, it's a little tricky right now for me to get in there.
Yeah,
but I just put some stuff on my wife's laundry shelves.
Nice.
While we record,
they're dank laundry shelves, though. As far as laundry shelves go, pretty rad.
I mean, until they fall down during a live, but right now they're dank. The kids might even say certified dank.
Yeah. How's so they're saying you're clear and I might be a little fuzzy, even though my camera is supposed to be 4K. So
I thought I was the fuzzy one.
Well, maybe we both look good. I need a haircut though. I'm getting a little fuzzy.
Yeah. Get that quarantine cut going.
Rod Spina says, Droopy Whiskey, did you hit Buffalo Trace store in Frankfurt? What bottles were they selling? I did not. I did not make it out to distilleries actually outside of our quick stop at Willett and Bardstown Bourbon Company. Next time. All my shopping I did in that video I posted on Monday. Sorry, squad, for that. Super lo-fi. But you guys seem to dig the content anyway. But everything that I picked up, I chronicled in that video. So,
man, you've been missing a bunch since you left.
Yeah, well, that's the way it is. FOMO is
the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
It's the way the Weeglin topples. That's what my dad used to always say.
I spent plenty of money when I was there, so it's okay if I'm missing some things. And we got some cool stuff to taste now. I'm sitting on like 40 samples of craft whiskeys from Nation. Yeah, so
you're gonna get there.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and taste 4 more tonight, or 3. I think I put 3 whiskeys, 12 through 14. So we'll get there. All right, enough blabber in here.
The people in the Nation probably don't. They don't know because they probably don't follow me. And I'm not saying you have to, But we
But you
also,
should.
on top of what you had said we're going to do tonight, I got a box to open.
Oh, do you even know what's in it?
I do know what's in it.
Oh, okay. All right.
You may know what's in it.
I didn't send it.
And we'll get there whenever.
Okay. Let's go. Okay. Here we go. Oh, Eric says congrats on 3K plus subs. Hey, thanks, dog. Keep it rolling. All right, and I'm going to do claps for audio here.
And a congrats to ourselves.
Because we made it.
It's 3K.
Okay. Welcome back to the Entry Proof Podcast. Stoked to have you guys here and to talk about Dusty Whiskies. I'm Drew, and with me is
Brian.
Not Drew. It's Brian.
No.
We're recording this bad boy live on the YouTube, so we got plenty of people in the chat here. So this might be a little bit interactive. If you are listening through the Entry Proof Podcast website or through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you consume your podcast through, pretty awesome that you found us. If this is your first episode, make sure you check back at some of the ones we've dropped previous. Our first episode was an awesome one with Danny Calloway from Bardstown Bourbon Company. And we had just a ball talking about his journey and the mission, the ethos, the vibes, the culture behind Bardstown Bourbon Company. Like I left there, I was already intrigued by what was going on at Bardstown Bourbon Company, but I left there like literally jacked. Brian, what was your vibes on Bardstown pre-podcast and post-podcast?
It has been growing in terms of products of theirs that I have tried, that I have enjoyed, apart from like brand fandom, if you will. But being there and being able to hear more about the mission and hear Danny talk about everything, it's just one of those times where it like brings it home. You know what I mean? And so I'm just excited to see where they go. And just before we keep going, though, kind of on the note that you had mentioned, for those who are just now jumping in, if you listen to this, if you make it to the end and you say, "Oh man, I want to catch that when they're doing it live," make sure to go over to Drew P Whiskey on YouTube, subscribe. You'll get alerts when these pop up. You could be a part of Neat Nation. You can interact with us while we're recording,
which is worthwhile. It's fun. There's how many? We got 66 members right now of Neat Nation tuning in to watch us record and of course interact, because one of my favorite things is the questions and the conversation. And how many squad members in the chat right now have I met a few of you guys in person already. We're swapping samples, having a good time. So it's just a fun way to build community around whiskey, particularly while we're still in the midst of COVID. Like we're just waiting right now in Wisconsin for them to tell us how they're going to roll the vaccine out. And we've got nothing so far. So that's kind of depressing. I would very much like to get shot in that way and be able to move on from this, but whatever. For now, here we are casting pods and talking some whiskey tonight. Before we get into our topic, which I already did say was Dusty Whiskey, we're not even going to define Dusty Whiskey yet. I want to know, Brian, what are you drinking? Let's give the people a little. What's your pregame, your palate cleanser?
The pre-game. So in our setup, I poured a little bit of Evan Williams Bottled and Bond, and then at your mention, which I thought, yes, that sounds good. I am pouring a little bit of this 2016. It's a Liquor Locker pick, Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit.
Sweet. Mine is just off the shelf, more recent. So I don't know when this was actually bottled. Oh, no, I do. July 31st, 2020 Kentucky Spirit. So the rebrand. Man, I tell you what, Wild Turkey rebrands their products every 6 months. It's ridiculous. Like, guys, come on, commit to fresh. And I gotta say, like this, while this bottle is kind of nice and clean, I much prefer the uniqueness of that old Kentucky Spirit bottle that you had. Show the people that one more time, like the actual like turkey feather kind of
makes for a cool infinity bottle, or just kind of like to refill. You got that kind of fun wood cork there.
It's awesome.
Fun looking bottle.
Yep. But whatever, juice is pretty much the same. I really like. I mentioned this on one of my videos before. I really like the proof point of Kentucky Spirit. It's at 101. I mean, between bottled and bond and 115, I feel like that's my money zone. And when they get hotter than that, it has to be a really good whiskey, to be able to deliver flavor through the heat. But Kentucky Spirit Squad, if you haven't tried it, you should probably do that. Excuse me. So while it's nice to pregame, of course, you guys aren't here today. You haven't tuned in to listen to us talk about Kentucky Spirit, Wild Turkey. You want us to talk about Dusties, which, Brian, if I ask you to define what is a Dusty, if somebody says I like Dusty whiskeys or I'm into Dusties, give me the Dusties. What the heck is a Dusty? I had a friend named Dustin who went by Dusty when I was like 9.
Right.
That has nothing to do with this either. What is a Dusty?
Yeah, I think it's kind of two things. I think in general, I think when someone talks about Dusties, they are probably talking about older whiskey, like in the 90s and back. So before that, when someone's talking about Dusties, I imagine first thought that's where they're going with it. But to be fair, I would say, where it got its term is probably still relevant to some extent, which is just whiskeys that are older than kind of what's currently being produced. And somehow you go into a store and it's still sitting there, likely with dust on it, again, would not qualify in the termed Dusty, if you will. But, a buddy of mine, even I'd say a couple months ago, was talking about going into one of his local stores and had a Bardstown Bourbon Company. I want to say it was either the Apple Brandy or the Chateau de la Baude, one of the two of them. But they weren't putting out anymore. There's just like 4 of them on the shelf, and you couldn't find them at that point, out and about. And so he snatched them up. Or
Dusties.
like my buddy last year who grabbed me this 2020. Grabbed me this 2016 Liquor Locker Kentucky Spirit that was still chilling on the shelf. He brought a whole case back for us.
Oh, dang.
My buddy Ben, what a great guy. And again, that's kind of an example of modern, like, man, can you believe that some people still going into stores and seeing old label Elijah Craig barrel proof or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of taps into it. But what we're talking about and what a general public, I would assume, is talking about is like 90s and beyond. And beyond, I mean, the other direction.
I think that's generally what I would think of too. If you're in the chat, what would you guys consider a Dusty? I had somebody reach out to me on Instagram. There was a picture of something around my bar, and I've got some front age stated Elijah Craig's Big Red 12s. They're like, oh, those Dusty Craigs. I'm like, well, they're like from 2015, so I wouldn't have considered them Dusty. But that said, if they were still on the shelf now, that store's not moving a lot of volume, so they probably are Dusty and they're discontinued. So,
well, not entirely. It's not necessarily that they're not moving volume. Sometimes they just come across that stuff, even in right before the holidays. Willett started putting out these like early 2000s. I thought like old Bardstowns or like pure Kentuckys or stuff, and people were going nuts. Like, oh my gosh, get to the gift shop. And it wasn't for family estate. It was from these older bottlings of stuff they just, I guess, found in the warehouse, or they probably
kept for a special release. Yeah, they probably kept them. Well, so here's probably the closest I've ever gotten to a Dusty on the shelf, which is, again, we're talking like 2015, was one of the local liquor stores that does a lot of volume, had this old Nicholson bottled in bond. So David Nicholson, 1843, used to be a bottled in bond product. It's no longer. I think they stopped doing that in 2016. But there was one of these on the shelf against all the new releases. And I was like, well, that is unique. That has not been there before. And so I think like in some cases, maybe they're holding on to a case or two of old stuff, and then they're like, let's throw it out there and make somebody's day. So,
right.
So I have no idea if this is any good. I've never actually had Nicholson. I know it's a Luxco product.
Find out. Chug it.
maybe right now. Maybe we'll do it right now. But yeah, we're actually
I don't know if
talk
you get up
a
to
little
enough super chat. I think enough super chat, like a super chat goal. You got to pop that Nicholson right now and do a little
Just
nation chug.
Nation chug. Yeah, I mean, it would be a very modest chug, but yeah, you know what? If we got to $50 in super chats today on the YouTubes, I will open the Nicholson alongside these other Dusties, or these Dusties, whether or not you qualify. It is a Dusty, whatever. But it's good incentivization for people to support the effort, support the content. This is free. You guys get this for free. No, I don't want to course. I never wanted to course since starting this channel. It's something we did, for fun and passion. So
Absolutely,
y'all do you, and we'll just deliver some tasties here of Dusty. So yeah, again, definition of Dusties. Well, there is no formal definition according to Webster's dictionary. There's just a bunch of whiskey geeks who find quote unquote dusty bottles. And so that can vary, as we saw in the Bardstown Bourbon Company vintage whiskey library, or whatever they call that. It can range from 1890s bourbon all the way up to probably 1990s, maybe early 2000s. In terms of formal definition, which we're making the formal definition. Brian, right now, you got to make the year cutoff. What is it? Would you say it's 2000, or where would you formulate the cutoff date for the
97
Dusty? 1997. All right. If
97.
it's 99, it's out.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I'm not that old. I'm 31, and I was 8 years old in 97. So yeah, we're not talking about that long ago. All right. Before we get into the tasting, a little bit more a review here in this Dusty subject too, because it's kind of it seems like a progression for bourbon geeks. As you get into bourbon, you start exploring stuff. You learn about bottled and bond, and then you go to like single barrels and barrel proof. That's cool and great. But then you're like, okay, what else is there? There's the limited releases. Okay, what else is there? There's discontinued stuff. There's old stuff. There's hunting estate sales, trying to find stuff that grandpa had in his locker. What do you think the allure is in Dusties? Because we do see this progression kind of come to fruition, and then people get super into this old juice. So what in your opinion, is the allure, Brian?
I think everybody has or eventually runs into somebody who is the Dusty guy or falls into it and just says, you just have to try this. Like, of all the stuff you're trying, you got to try this because it doesn't taste like other stuff that you can get. I think maybe that's it. I think as people hop around, they might go after the allocated stuff. A pours at the bar, they do the hunting, or they know what the Buffalo Trace profile is, whatever it is. I think just in the search of trying to find what else is there, you kind of discover that there's this older thing. And one thing, man, we didn't get this recorded, but when Dan had left the room after we had recorded, and he brought his other buddy in, who was the beverage director at Bardstown Bourbon Company, and I had asked him, or we were asking him, what's your favorite bottle in here or whatever. He had said something. He had pointed to some bottles. We made a comment about a Wild Turkey product, and he said this comment, and I just wish I had captured it for this reason or otherwise. And he said that, people will take older whiskey nowadays and they'll think they could just sit on it. They've got these synthetic corks or whatever. They think they could just sit on it, and they'll open it in 20 years or so and have this dusty-like experience. He says it's not going to happen. The wood corks or whatever, they didn't provide a perfect seal. There's just something about that just allowed the whiskey to change a little bit. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, because I know you were talking about things to look out for when it comes to Dusties, but it just had me starting to think about, not even necessarily the time capsule of days of old, which is still true, because back when bourbon wasn't as big of an industry as it is right now, to try and get product out, it was slower. There was more mature trees they're making the oak from, and things were just looser, I would say. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not that old either. I don't know if that's true. But
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
what I read. And you just get the impression that whiskey then was just different. But aside from the time capsule piece is the fact that if that thing that he is mentioning is true, you kind of have an ever evolving whiskey in a world where you're told as long as you don't open it, the whiskey's not going to change. And I think that's intriguing.
So RW in the chat said, is it the Pokemon effect with Dusty Whiskies? You got to catch them all. And I think it kind of is, it is the hunt, I mentioned that in, collecting whiskey, or what do you do with your whiskey? One of my videos there, I said, there's an allure to special whiskey in that, you can't find it all the time. So it's like, well, why do you go deer hunting? It's not for the meat. Like, it's really not. It's so expensive to get a license and, go to the range and dial in, whatever, what do you call that? Sighted in. It's been a while since I've been deer hunting. Love deer hunting, but it's been a while. Anyway, it costs way more to shoot a deer than it does to go buy a cow. So that's not entirely true, but pound for pound, I'm sure it's cheaper to buy the beef. But you do it because, like, man, when you shoot a rad buck and you've got that 8-point, with the nice mass, tall tines, you shoot that, 12-point non-typical whitetail, you're jacked about that because not everybody gets to do that. It's a very unique experience. In the same way that being able to land a Dusty, an ungettable whiskey would be, it's exciting. You feel it in your loins a little bit. It moves you as a person, gets you jacked. So definitely I think that hunt is certainly a component of why Dusty Whiskies is a thing. And then I think too, like, if you're really a palate person, human beings have this nature of wanting to new experiences. Like, show me the next thing. What's the next thing? Go deeper, deeper, deeper. It's sort of ingrained in who we are to look for something beyond what we have. And it's not always born out of greed. I think it's sort of the heart's cry, the craving of the soul. So if whiskey is your jam, your soul cravings might drive you to say, okay, well, I've tasted a lot of whiskey. There's a lot of whiskey on the shelf, but I've had a lot of it. So what else is out there for me to try and experience? And yeah, there's some old stuff that not everybody's been able to try who's living, very few people, and you might have a little sip of something that kind of, takes you a place you've never been.
And to be fair too, there are people who, we're seeing distillers taking off age statements. They're trying to distill earlier, get out sooner. Not everybody. And there are people who are still using older whiskey, older sourced whiskey or whatever. But again, when you think about Dusty Whiskies, yeah, there probably was age statements there too. There's a lot of blends happening, but I feel like, again, what you generally hear is age statement is just the minimum, but they put a lot of older stock in it. I don't think that's exactly the true now. I feel like if there's an age statement, it's probably a majority of that age, because why would they put older stock? It costs more. Why would they do that? But back then you would. And so an 8-year age stated whiskey could still taste real nice and old if that's your profile.
Kyle Ramage in the YouTube chat, who's a coffee guy like us, says rare equals good for many people. 90-point Ethiopia versus 90-point Panama Geisha. Which one sold for more? Well, if you're a coffee person, it's Panama Geisha because it's quote unquote rarer. And that is true too, is the allure of something that you can't have every day definitely makes the experience more unique. And if the experience is more unique, you're more likely to remember it as a product that was better, because your experience is more, well, I keep saying the word unique. I apologize for that. Nothing else is coming to my brain right now. But for instance, in coffee, I'll have people, and I'm sure you have this same experience, Brian, where people will come up to me and ask me like, oh, have you guys ever had any Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee? And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I know exactly what you're talking about, person. Like, so let me guess. You were in Jamaica and you were at Sandals Resort and they gave you coffee and you're on the beach with your wife. You've been eating a lot. you're swimming, you're enjoying the weather. Lord knows what else you've been doing, but you've been doing fun things. And then somebody brings you coffee and they tell you it's Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee and that it's supposed to be really good. Odds are pretty good that you're going to think that coffee was the best because it's been surrounded in your brain by very positive memories. But if you were to say taste it blind next to, pretty dope Kenyan coffee from a specialty coffee roaster in the United States, you'd
maybe black and white, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, odds are just not as good that what they gave you at Sandals is gonna measure up to what you're getting at a specialty coffee roaster in the States. That's the point. So experience influences your perception of something's flavor. That's my point. Cameron Batko says that 200-hour supernatural coffee from Stone Creek Coffee was very interesting. Gummy bears and chocolate. Yeah, super interesting coffee for sure. I stand by that. Stand by that coffee. I should have brought some down for you, Brian. I did not. I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, I offered you coffee too, and you said, no, I have plenty of coffee where I'm from.
Well, you did. I did drink Quills while I was down there. But
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, it just seems a little bit like. Well, anyway, I was gonna say it seems a little bit greedy, but I had no problem taking whiskey. So it depends, I guess. Depends on what the priorities of the day are. Okay, so let's talk about the challenges here of getting into Dusties. I mean, one of them obviously is the fact that you can't go to the store. I mean, I've gotten down on my hands and knees to look into the back of the bottom shelf to see if there's some old Austin Nichols 101 Wild Turkey, and have not found any. Other Dusty hunters have beat me to it, but you can't really Dusty hunt on the shelves anymore. If you're into pre-2000 whiskeys, you're not going to find them going to some liquor store in Ottumwa, Iowa. There's been somebody like Brian who's rolled through there before and stopped at every tiny little liquor store and cleaned them out. So that's one very obvious hurdle to getting into Dusty whiskeys. Brian, what would be some more that you could think of?
To be honest, and I want to say this because I am by no means, we didn't preface this. You say you haven't had Dusties. I am not a Dusty pro. I have a couple. I'm intrigued by it. And I think this is a good episode because I think there are people who are here, you being one of them. We're going to taste, you're going to try some Dusty stuff. I want to do a revisit episode where we have someone on who's more knowledgeable.
Like an actual.
We walk through it with them. So backing back up though from that, Dusty is tricky because I don't know what to shop for. Like if I'm looking for, I talked to some people and they've given me a couple recommendations, but like I think to me the biggest hurdle in Dusty whiskey is that you don't know unless you know, you don't know what's good. You don't know what to look for, and you don't know if the price is right. That's been the biggest thing for me is not, I see the price doesn't make sense. It's not like I don't know, maybe I just don't follow it enough, but I don't feel like there's as close of a barometer as there is for retail price of current whiskey and perhaps it's secondary or something like that. It's just kind of the Wild West when it comes to Dusty stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's really
you could really charge whatever you want, I would assume.
Yeah, it seems really dangerous from a pricing place. I mean, there are still there is a Facebook group out there right now that was like secondary price tracker, I think is what it's called, or something like that. I'll look it up here, actually, because I think it's helpful if any of you guys want to get on this. I might get in trouble for sharing this, though. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to share this. Oh, come on. We're going to cut out the lull here on the podcast side. I'm a member of this. I must have gotten picked. What's that?
Had it open. So this would be a great time for you to do a nickel shot if you had it open.
Did we get to 50? No. We got a couple kick-ins.
But cheers to Joshua and cheers to Tom. Both for chipping in, guys.
Heroes. Heroes both. Oh, I also got to thank my boy Matt Pletz. He had given me some samples, but he had also contributed via Venmo some donation to the channel. So,
Oh, nice.
Nice guy.
We can set up a Venmo too. That's off subject.
If you guys find yourself in the Milwaukee area this summer, we will have drinks and play golf if you guys are golfers for sure. So looking forward to sharing some pours with Matt post vaccination and hitting the links when it warms up. So that website or that Facebook group is BSM Value Reference. BSM-Value Reference. It's just basically a big forum where you can search for a particular bottle, and people will share, what they bought or sold it for and when, so you can kind of track secondary values that way.
I think I'm in that. I'd have to go through and see if there's. I still feel like Dusties are tricky with that. It's like I've got a 72 decanter, a 73 decanter, 74 decanter, 75 decanter. This decanter has a monkey on it. This decanter has an elephant on it. This one is an elephant, but it's a different color elephant.
But you're gonna get closer probably. So I just searched Chessman because I think the coolest decanters that were made are those Old Crow Chessman. And I've got one reference here of 450 with a quote unquote good fill, good fill, and then one here bought it for 700 on May 2nd, 2020. So, you're going all right for a full Chessman. It's going to be somewhere in the 500, probably 500 on the low end to 700, maybe a little north of that, given that last sale was in May. And
Eric's here talking about how crazy. You and I haven't talked about this, but the Woodford double oak drop here has made all the Kentuckians go for a frenzy. It's been a wild.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was dropped, but I think double oak is enough. I can't imagine what the profile is on the Woodford double oak. It just seems a bit excessive.
I'm asking if I saw Mash and Drums train set of decanters. No, I did not. I wonder if those are the Ezra Brooks trains. I'm sure Beam probably did trains too.
Dude, Beam did everything. So let's go into that as a topic here before. I'm sure my samples here have gotten enough airtime. We'll turn to those and we can come back to some other Dusty topics in a minute. But, when we talk about dangers of Dusty hunting, there is a buttload of these old ceramic decanters, particularly Beam. The Ducks Unlimited series. They had series for pretty much everything. At any sort of event, they're just trying to figure out how to sell whiskey, and so you put it in funny decanters. But somebody on the chat threw out, and this is a very important point, is not all of those decanters are very, very safe to drink from, and that old ones tend to have a lead content in them. So there's lead content. That's one problem, is you don't want to slam those. Lead is not good for you. And then the other issue would be that a lot of these decanters didn't have great seals. In that those corks are pretty old, and some of those decanters were kind of made to sit more or less on their side, which is not great for whiskey to be exposed to cork as alcohol degrades cork. So some of these old ceramic decanters are really just a recipe for disaster, and they're 80 proof, 70s Beam, which I have not had, mind you, but I'm not exactly tempted to have. There's not a lot of allure there, nor have they been met with a high level of applause and aplomb. There weren't any old Beam ceramic decanters or old Ezra Brooks ceramic decanters from the 70s in that Bardstown vintage whiskey library we were in.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky. You run the risk of cloudiness, of murkiness, and is that murkiness oxidation? How people ask a lot about weights. They're trying to figure out has there been evaporation loss, and is that going to have affect the flavor, and in what way? Because of the extra space in the bottle? Is it tainted by the cork because it sat on it and it kind of started to break the cork away? Is it pulling it? Was it stored in a weird smelling room and not have a good seal, thus have weird aromas? Like there's a lot of funk. And aside from that, I feel like you see a lot of people who, a lot of times they'll have like tack strips or something like that on them, but you can never quite tell if they've been tampered with or not. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is it's so old. Like what's the traceability? Has someone been, is this real or not? You got to find a credible buyer if you're buying at all, just because of that, if it's not something you found somewhere. But that's still, you can still have that dusty experience, because again, this is kind of out of place to bring up, but one thing that's kind of neat is, you could just go perusing sometimes for like estate sales, or like at an auction lot, or heck, I mean, maybe you can even find some minis at like I don't want to say a flea market. What are those things? What are those like antique stores called? You can sometimes just find this old, 80s minis in just some wacky places, and have that off the shelf dusty experience, and it also be a dusty. But yeah, I just feel like it's one of those things, like maybe you don't know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, I think that's true. Is when something has been sitting there that long, things are bound to go wrong. Over oxidation, certainly risk, cork taint, as you said, and then you have zero idea of what the quality is. If you, excuse me, my gosh, we're gonna cut that out. You have zero idea of what the quality is if you haven't been able to try it. And of course, you can try and read something, but the resources about like, is this particular dusty good? They're just less. It's harder to look up on the Google what the review is of a donut wild turkey or Christmas rye wild turkey. What's some other ones? Some of the Old Fitz crystal decanters. Which distillery did the bowling pin? That's a good one. That's a good decanter. I think that's Old Fitz. Or not Old Fitz, Old Forester, I mean.
Might be. They've had a lot of different, and that's what's kind of cool about their tour. You get to see all these different types of bottles they've used.
Yeah,
in the chat about all the toast. Yep, all that toast profile on that Woodford double, and then even where to go. Eric's asking if anyone had the opportunity to try the new Angel's Envy single barrel store picks that came up. I had offered one to you if you were interested, but I did get to try the one from Total Wine. It was fine. I don't often drink Angel's Envy to know like what to do. I think, especially coming off of trying some of these BBC finishes, not, again, I really don't want to sound all fanboy-y. I'm not trying to. I just feel like that's a brand that does finishing well. And I don't want to say Angel's Envy isn't doing finishing well. It was just fine. It had good stuff. There wasn't a lot of negative stuff about it. It just wasn't necessarily my cup of tea.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel that way about standard Angel's Envy. It is good. It is sweet. It is about as unoffensive as it gets, but it didn't blow me away. I wanted more depth out of it. Like, the interesting thing about those Bardstown finishes is there's layers of flavor. I don't get layers from the Angel's Envy products I've had.
Yeah.
All right. So a little introduction into Dusties. God help you should you decide to go dusty hunting. Do your best to do some research. You can actually, there is the Bardstown Vintage Bourbon Library. I just need to look up what that's called, but that is chronicled online, so you can see what Fred Minnick curated for that particular shop. That might help get you some knowledge of what's out there, point you in a direction that may be more helpful than you just trying to figure it out on your own. Figuring it out on your own generally means you're going to spend a lot of money, and you are going to make some mistakes. It's not the end of the world.
Buddies will just kind of educate you a little bit, either cut you some samples or let you, taste with them safely during the COVID.
Big Rona.
Let
No
you
doubt.
taste through and trying to learn some of that stuff on your own.
Friends are wonderful when it comes to bourbon. Obviously, as I'm thankful that Brian kicked me 5 samples here, so now I'm going to pull these suckers in. And these I have no idea what they are. I know a few of the Dusties that Brian had, so I have an idea of what might be in some of these glasses, but I have literally no understanding of what the profile of those products would be. So I actually have zero clue about what's in these glasses. They've now been sitting out here for almost an hour, so plenty of time to quote unquote open up.
Oh my gosh. The nose on the first one. I've not nosed these. I had it covered a little bit and then uncovered, but this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. It's good. That first one's already. Whew, oh yeah.
So we should do a reveal after each one. So
let's do it up real quick to the guy to the nation.
How should we do this?
I've got the bottles back here. I know what they are. I've already taken a photo of what those will be as the reveal to for Drew to share on his Insta or whatever. But what do you want after we taste through them? Do you want to see what it is, or do you want them just to kind of go through? We taste them all and then we show what they are. It's not like he has to. I guess my worry in showing them after is I'd be curious to know what his favorite was in the end, and I don't know if seeing the bottle will cause a bias.
Yeah, I doubt it.
And pick. But again, it's not for any particular reason. He doesn't know that much about Dusty. So right now it's basically just fun.
Yeah, so. I mean, and in that sense, I don't know that there would be bias.
Jeremy asked if there's going to be a ranking. He said, if so, wait till the end.
All right. Okay, let's rank them. That's what we'll do. That's a good idea. Jeremy was the first one to throw it in there, so that's the way it will be. But Eric says one by one will be easier to follow, especially for the podcast. That's true. That is a good point.
I will say, I went ahead and did pre-roll describing what all of them are. So I'll interject that before you taste, so the podcast listeners will know what you're tasting, even though live here don't necessarily.
All right, that's awesome. Yeah, that was well planned. I had no idea you did that. So perfect. So
Tom, no disdain for Insta, man. I very much like the Insta, so I spend a lot of time on the Insta myself.
Yeah, Brian's been known to build quite the following. His abandoned coffee feed is followed by some 50,000 last time I checked coffee geeks. So
it's gone down. I saw that I liked coffee and whiskey. They're not.
There's some people posting on the
just
regular.
For the coffee, not for the other flavors.
Yeah. 44,200. Still, I have, I think, 1,100 on mine. So, all right.
Okay.
So,
YouTube subscribers. So
here's what we're going to do. Since you've been able to brief folks on the pod about what these are, we're going to drink through them and rank them, and then we'll reveal.
I've got it.
And I will try and save a little bit in each one so I can go back after the reveal and go back. Oh, that's interesting. All right.
I've got a better idea. If you cannot look at your what we'll do is I can show the bottle and you'll close your eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Just don't look at the live stream.
All right.
For a minute. And then you won't see what they is, but everyone else will see while we're tasting through.
Okay, so I got to get off you because I'm kind of watching the chat. I got to get off the chat because there's a delay. So I'm going to get over to StreamYard. Okay. I'm going to look down and you can just let me know when you showed people. Here we go.
Yeah, actually, to be completely. Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Just show them.
Number 1.
All right, clear.
Number 2. I'm gonna go through the whole list.
Okay.
So they'll know, and then I won't have to do it again.
Yeah. Hey, squad. Don't mention about anything. What number 1, number 2 in the chat, because I'm gonna follow along in the chat. So don't spoil it for me until I'm through all 5.
That said, though, Eric did bring up, the ranking doesn't exactly matter. So if we end up talking about it, if we end up seeing it, it is really not that big of a deal.
No, man. So, whatever one wins, it gets an award. It gets the Drew P. Whiskey Best Dusty Award. 1 out of 5, though. So not Best Dusty of all time.
That's something special. All right, let's jump into it, man.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned the nose on one already. You were like, "Oh, the nose on one." The nose on one is quite nice.
It was so good.
Yeah, it is very deep. Actually reminds me of it's like Buffalo Trace, actually. But I'm talking like Stag. I get pronounced oak. There's some alcohol on there, but it's easy sniffing of sweet oak, brown sugar.
Like a brown sugar bomb, which
I just said brown sugar. I said sweet oak, brown sugar.
Yeah, it is. It's got tons of sweetness there.
Yeah, not a ton of complexity. It smells great, smells well aged, but I don't get like, oh, I'm getting floral and sweetness and spicy. I mainly get sweet oak and brown sugar.
Someone asked, using a Wine Savers cork on a bottle. Yes, I do use Wine Savers on a couple, especially if they get past half full. I feel like there are people in both camps, whether they do like that or do not like that, but there are several bottles that I use those with.
All right. Palate on one. Creamy.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very creamy. Like butter. Like really oily. One of them, like most oily, which I love, Squad. Like that slippery, viscous, creamy, oily. That's a fun experience for sure. Doesn't pack as much
spice
oak as I expected based on the nose that I got.
No, I think the oak puts itself in there well. It's like boom, placed, and then the spice is similar. The spice is placed, and then as it finishes, you have a little bit of like this kind of floral spice, but lingering with like some like a touch of musty chocolate.
Yeah, I don't get much must. I get milk chocolate, not dark chocolate.
Yeah, as it's lingering, it will linger with a little bit of funk, just a touch.
I'm searching. So if you told me, or if you didn't tell me this was a Dusty, I would be like, oh, it's a really good whiskey, but there's nothing that makes me go like, this is crazy different. I've never had this before. It's very good. It's very good. I quite enjoy it. That oily mouthfeel is something that is hard to find. But beyond that, there's nothing in the taste profile that made me go like, oh, wow, this is funky. Or because the guys on Bourbon Pursuit will talk all the time about dusty funk. And I'm like, still don't know what that means.
Yeah. Not as prevalent in this one. That's
all right. Number 2. I do get more funky vibes in this one. And, I've made fun of color before, but in the bottles, as I looked at all the bottles lined up, number 2 was noticeably lighter than the other 4 in color.
I did spend not a ton of time, but I did try and line up. I was tasting back and forth some of these, and I thought there was a good progression to what you're tasting tonight. So this is actually a topic for another day, but I don't know if you all notice that, like, how you taste through things, if it is set up by the pour that's before it. It was something that was really big in chocolate. Whenever I've been talking with people in chocolate, they talk about setting up pairings or setting up tastings and building upon flavors. And I got a friend locally who is really about setting up tastings that build upon flavor. I don't necessarily, I would love that, but I just don't know that it makes that much of a difference. But in this case, I did really like to after the first one. So that's where I put it.
So the nose, I get kind of toasted grains, less oak, almost like raw wood. So raw oak. So like wood shop, not full particle board, which I get in craft whiskeys. But if I was to pull out youth on this, or at least out of these two, this one I would definitely peg as a younger product because it has some of that grainy, lighter, more fresh wood characteristics I would generally attribute to a young whiskey.
And kind of compared to the brown sugar in the first one, I feel like it is lighter. It is It is a little bit more youthful, a little bit more playful, and then it has more like a little touch of caramel. Not super developed, but a little bit of caramel sweetness.
It's playful, like what? Like what's it playing? Is it like hopscotch? Are we talking jump rope? You know,
I'm just
bumpy
thinking the same way.
slide.
Like if I'm talking about something that's lively, it's just got
Sure.
like it's got a little zing, got a
Kick.
little pep, it's got a little pick me up, a little giddy up in the horse. You know what I'm saying?
It is. Yeah, it's more in the mellow honey / simple syrup sweetness realm. It's still plenty sweet, but doesn't bring the brown sugary caramely depth.
Not super deep. Yeah.
No.
I like Jeremy's comment, sawdust, yum. And I don't know if that's sarcasm or not, but I say that because in whiskey in general, and specifically Dusties, there are notes that I will use or taste or pick up on that I feel like out of context, I'd be like, well, that sounds awful. But in whiskey, if it's placed well, I feel like it's intriguing. And I don't remember if we talked about this or not, but one of the Bourboner new riff picks that I have, I think it was like Seal Box 3 or something like that. It's very earthy and it tastes like rocks. It's like minerally and it kind of tastes like dirt and rocks. And it's weird. It's really weird, but it's also a little intriguing. Anyway.
Yeah, dirt and rock's generally not something I would vibe at, just as sawdust isn't. So, like, I definitely prefer number 1 to number 2 here. Number 2, not bad, but, there are a lot of modern whiskeys I would prefer over this. Nothing offensive about it. It's just okay. It's all right. It kind of reminds me of, I want to say Old Forester 86, like low proof. There's not any sort of semblance of heat in this. It is smooth, and I mean that. Like, that's actually a good adjective for this one. It is smooth. All right, number 3. Back to more fun on the nose. Sweet baked goods. Like I get croissant, and then I get that buttercream frosting note. I like on the nose. Like confectioner sugar. My mom would make this fermented sweet bread called Amish friendship bread. It's because you're supposed to share this like sourdough starter, but that stuff was dope. And that's kind of what this reminds me of. There is a little bit of a wet wood kind of, you're out in the woods and there's sort of this literally dank. Just a suggestion, though.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of dampness.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah. Just in general, I mean, even though I liked how sweet 1 was, I think that 3 has a lot more character, a lot more depth. The spice is kicked up a little bit more. I don't necessarily know that it's funkier, although we did just talk about it having like wet, damp wood, and
which I didn't get in 1. Going back to 1, I actually pulled a little bit more. A little bit more like baking spices out of it. Whereas this one, I want to say it's a little. I'm gonna get nose fatigue if I sit here and snort this stuff much longer. I got
a can of coffee.
Yeah, I mean, I just sniff myself, which I'll do periodically to try and reset the olfactory. But I sort of live my life in a constant state of congestion, so maybe not the best noser of things. But yeah, smells great. Bottom line is really nice nose on this one. Okay, here's where we got layers. We have fruit.
Yep.
Grapes. So you got like purple grapes, a little bit of cherry, plenty of oak influence, heavy sweetness, big spices like cinnamon and brown sugar, a lot of them both. This is an experience here, and enough heat like to deliver some intense flavors. Not subtle, but all kinds of different stuff going on.
Not a ton of wood, but a little oak.
Yeah, I get enough, man. Like this one tastes substantially older, more time in the barrel than number 2. It doesn't leave you with a heavy, or it doesn't leave you with kind of any dryness on the palate. Yeah, I mean, this is a nice combination of deep sweetness and fruitiness. I'm pulling more oak than you were. That was definitely number 3, though, so we're tasting the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far. So 1 and 3, both quite good. I'm going to give 3 the edge right now over 1. So we're going 3, 1, and then 2 so far.
Uh-huh.
All right. Palate cleanse. All right, number 4. Like do some comparative nosing here. Okay, so 4 is going to be even deeper. I'll stop using the word deeper. 4 is going to be even more heavy on the nose, more oak, smoky. Get plenty of barrel char up in there. Char is more pronounced here. And I get some if this is going to be embarrassing when these are revealed, but if you told me that a modern wild turkey was on the table, I'd pick this one out. I'd say this reminds me of Rare Breed. There's sort of a mashy, like fermenty kind of flavor. It almost tastes sour. Like I think of the word sour mash is funny because all mash is kind of sour, but I'm not reference to a sour mash process at all. But the fermentation, the mashing process, there is a smell and a taste, actually, if you ever taste mash in a distillery, that sometimes carries over to the end product, particularly in the nose. So I get it in some of the less refined Heaven Hill products. I get it in Wild Turkey. And I get some of it here on the nose. Yeah, definitely sort of the sour fermenty, but then plenty of age. Wood-wise, less sweet oak and more of a cedar. It's just got a little bit more sharpness. It's a sharper nose than number 3 was. 3 was...
little touch of fruit, a little touch of leather in there.
Well, I'd say well-worn leather. We're talking about hunting lodge leather, unless they this is fresh. Like, if you got a new Bible, a calfskin Bible, it doesn't smell like that. All right, on the palate. Still thinking Wild Turkey profile here. Reminds me of a lot of the Kentucky Spirit I had earlier. Also, the Decades release Wild Turkey. Some of those more well-aged Wild Turkeys can be quite viscous, which I do think this one is. So pretty solid mouthfeel on this. I have a honey sweetness. The finish is kind of drying, and I get a little bit of like a hoppy bitterness on the finish, which I'm not a huge fan of. So the finish to me is not wonderful, but everything else is pretty good. Nose is nice, good sweetness, good viscosity. The finish is there. Like if you like just a long finish, it's okay, but it's just not my favorite kind because it's kind of dry. And
yeah, and go back to 1 and see how sweet 1 is coming from 4.
well, I don't have much of this. Get a lot of lip smacking. Sorry, squad. Yeah, 1 and 4 in terms of my overall assessment, pretty comparable. I'm gonna give the edge to 1. Number 2 is still not my favorite right now, but I'm saving enough where I can do a final test of all of these before I finish. So we're going 1, 2, 4, or I'm sorry, that was completely wrong. So far, we're going 3 as our best, then 1, then 4, then 2,
then 2. I think there's a little bit of something quirky about 4.
Yeah,
2.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is. I'd say it's probably the less refined. I would pick number 2 as a more refined one, but 2 is just so chill and mellow. Like I want more bold flavors in my bourbon, particularly if it's dusty. It's supposed to be. Like, there's a mythological character that's supposed to accompany a dusty. And nothing has hit me like, oh, wow, that was absolutely bonkers so far. Although, I mean, 3 was really nice. Here we go, though. Number 5. Get all that out of the... What are those little air sacs called in your lungs?
I just assumed they were lungs. What are you talking about?
Nah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember my biology class, but I'm trying to clear those out. Got to get whiskey vibes up in there. Number 5 on the nose. Man. Open up. Oh, there we go. Alveoli. I was going to say areola, but I'm pretty sure that's not right.
I'm guaranteeing that's not right.
There's so many things like uvula. That's another one to get confused with. That's that dangling thing at the back of your throat.
What were those things that people had at the soccer game? The zuzales. What were those? The things that people shook around during the soccer games that were so obnoxious and popular.
Like the thunder sticks?
I don't know. I don't think it was that. What were those called? Zuzulales?
Dude, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So I mentioned wet wood on number 3 or number 4 or something. Look, Tom.
The vuvuzela. Thank you, Tom. Tom coming through with the vuvuzela.
That was Rod, but Tom gave me flack for saying areola. I'm just talking about anatomy. I didn't mention it in any kind of inappropriate context. I certainly do not appreciate an overly crass demeanor. That said, I also am a big fan of the human body, and we'll celebrate that in the proper context. Context is everything here, squad. Like, I'm a married man, and that's an important thing to me. Fidelity, big fan of fidelity. That said,
I love this nose.
I'll get to the nose. I'm still on the topic at hand, but anyway, we'll move on. I grew up in a family that was very open and discussing anatomy, and it made for a lot of really funny times. Put it that way. Pretty amazing dinner table talk. All right, so layers here on this nose. I get more wet wood, not as dank, but it's like, I mean, say you were like building a table, and then you left that table outside and it got all wet. Then you brought it in and you took a hair dryer to it, and that evaporation with the heat and the fresh oak, because it's not piney, it's not cedary. I mean, that's a pretty elaborate articulation of what I'm smelling, but this is the spiciest nose by a long shot. Almost get like cayenne pepper. Like there's sort of this heat, this spicy heat. that goes beyond cinnamon and allspice and nutmeg. But it's also sweet too. Sweet and spicy with a very pungent wood, but not pungent in a bad way. It is, if you said there was one Dusty on the table, I'd probably pull out this one and go like, oh yeah, that one's kind of unique. Just gonna nose the rest of these. Oh man, the nose on 3 is very good. Okay, now going back to 5 here. Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough of that. Pretty solid. Lots of interesting stuff on there. Now, the palate. Big, rich caramel. A lot of spicy finish. What seems to be common here among these whiskeys is viscosity. And by viscosity, I mean syrupy, honey kind of mouthfeel, slippery finish, with the exception of number 4. I mentioned the finish on 4 was really, really dry. Not dry on the finish here. So rich sweetness. Plenty of age. Man, it's really good. It's going to be a tough call. I don't get a lot of fruit. Maybe some dried cherries. If I'm hunting, like it's deep. We're talking dried fruit. There's not like a pronounced acidity or like juiciness to it, but there's all kinds of heavily toasted sugars up in here. Well, me likey 5. 5 is very good.
5 I feel like is the most unique of them all. It does have the caramels. It has the sugars for sure, but it has something that's like, it is very perfumey to me.
You get floral in there,
but different than 4 Roses. It's like, it is more almost like factually or accurately like perfumey. It leaves a lingering like spritz of perfume like qualities to me in the palate.
We got tiny sips now. I'm almost out. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that makes me think like the retro, the sensation in your olfactory glands betwixt the roof of your mouth and your nose. Quite lovely. I don't get like a heavy, like, oh yeah, I'm getting roses, maybe honeysuckle. Like if it was a honeysuckle tea, okay, like white tea. There we go. If you want to call floral, I would say we're talking white tea up on number 5 for sure. White, like a peach white tea, dried peach isn't white tea. Okay, we're gonna call it at that. I've got just a tiny little bit left of 5 here, so now I'm gonna go back through for my final rankings. 5 and 3 are at the top. 1 was quite good, but it was slightly below that. 4 was next. Intense on that one. The drying mouthfeel really got me. And then 2 was just so mellow and chill and kind of youthful. It wasn't really vibing. So I'm going to start with 2. Cycle back through here.
Man, 4 is nice. Going back to 4 after 5. And then
2,
going back to 2, man, 2's got such a great, sweet nose.
2 does? I get too much youth on the nose on 2. I mean, it's a sweet,
so
chill, smooth.
Right now.
Well, good for you. 2 is nice. It's just not really my profile. All right.
Yeah, it does fall a little flat on the palate.
Yeah, I stand by my assessment on 2. So now I'm going to go to 4. And it kind of reminds me of some Knob Creek picks now, 4. Like where there's this big, bold, intense, like punch you right in the face, which I don't mind. I kind of like that. I mentioned that cedary note. Nice. It is big. It's delicious. That finish, though, is just holding it back for me relative to some of the others. But I'm liking the foreground on this better now, actually. That is it for what I have on number 4, though. So it's gonna have to. I'm gonna have to remember what I got. Yeah, that's all I got. All right, going back to 1 now. So number 2 still in last place. Number 4 is growing on me a little bit. Number 1 though has this. It's got a better finish. It does get a little grainy though, but it's more viscous, less dry. It does taste a little funkier to me than it did at the start, but reminds me, I keep going back to like a Stag Junior, which I love that. So yeah, I'm gonna keep giving 1 the edge to 4 here. So in last place, I still have number 2. In second to last, number 4. In third place, number 1. Okay. Going back to number 3. This is hard. There's just not enough here. No, there's plenty. You should be able to make a call.
I'm sorry.
No, you got to be. You were generous with the 5. I mean, this is it all told about 2.5 ounces of very rare whiskey. All right. The heat. So the hottest one out of these first 4 is definitely 3. 3 packs the most proof, at least to my mouth. It kind of singes the back sides of my tongue a little bit. And I'm getting a little bit more like charcoal-y, carbonic bitterness out of 3 than I did originally. So 3 is falling for me a little, whereas one may take the lead here over 3. I go back to 1. I got a little bit. Yeah, I got a little bit more 1 left. Yeah, I mean, so I hate trying to pick out my favorite squad. You guys know this if you've watched my shows. Yeah, tonight, because of the sustained sweetness and delightful mouthfeel, I'm going to go with 1. So I haven't gone back to 5 yet. But 1 over 3. 3 and 4 are probably pretty comparable. 2 still at the bottom. Now back to 5.
Now, while you're going through this, and I could ask this question again after if you'd prefer, but again, if you were to consider all of these pours being Dusties, like, are there flavors you find consistent among all of these? Do you like this? Are you like, cool, that's Dusty? Are you like, or are you thinking, I mean, I heard you say 4, you were like, oh, this kind of just reminds me of modern rare breed.
Yeah.
Are you noticing things about this, or are you like, no, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't see it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, they're all quite good. But again, these are ones I think that have a pretty solid reputation among Dusty whiskeys. So they're all very, very good, with the exception of 2, which is just good. So we're splitting hairs a little bit here. If I did these next to some other ones, would I be like, oh, these are really good? I don't know. I mean, well, here, let me. So what I will say is 5 is going to be my winner. The overall quality of that just feels a step above. Crazy viscous, not as punchy or as spicy actually as some of the other ones, particularly 3 and 4, but a very sweet, crazy viscous, and I do like that kind of white tea finish. If I had a big pour of this,
spiciest.
Did I really?
You did.
On the nose or on the palate?
Oh, that I actually would have to go back and listen to in post.
Yeah. So I did have a little bit less of 5 than the others, but now after tasting all of these, so here's the final ranking. 5, 1, 3, 4, 2. I'm going to go back and I've got a bourbon I've really been enjoying in this class, and that's the Bullet Blenders Select Batch 1, which is the only batch so far. Which is really good. So it's like, does anything stand out in these? Like, oh my gosh, that's mind blowing, completely different. No. In 4 out of the 5, there is a pronounced age component that I really, really like. Like, going back to Dusties, not all of these, I imagine, have age statements. Some of them might. That it does seem that in the 70s and 80s, whiskey was allowed in general to mature to a level that it's maybe not always allowed to mature to these days, because the craft distilleries are rushing to get their product out the door, and some of the larger distilleries were running low on some of their stocks. Just making sure I got a good charge on my battery here. So I'd say that is what is in common. I don't think there's any young whiskey here. Number 2 bears a passing resemblance to a younger whiskey, but there's nothing else that was like, oh yeah, that's youthful, or that sucks. They're all quite good. So when you tell me what they are, I may say, well, if you told me what 5 is or what 1 is, I'd probably be like, well, I'm going to keep an eye out for that. Anything else, I feel like there's a profile I can probably replicate through more modern whiskeys. At the same time, it's about the hunting somewhat, and having this whiskey that's, if it was barreled in 1960 and, it bottled in 1972, and then you get to drink it in 2020, some 50 years later, that's pretty cool. Like, that's just a fun human experience. Like, we all kind of, I think, resonate with the history behind it. And so I would definitely do that too. So why don't we reveal here? Let me have it. Let's start with number 2. What was number 2? My last place.
Your last place was 86 proof Old Forester from, it looks like bottom stamped 96. I first thought it was 95, but I think it's bottom stamped 96. So 90s 86 proof Old Forester.
I called it. I said it tasted like Old Forester 86.
Yeah, it had that banana profile. It's especially if you come off of one of the ones that are spicier, you definitely get a lot of sugary, like bruleed banana, like banana candy sweetness.
Old Forester 86 will taste like that.
It tastes like Old Forester, but I still feel like it tastes like just really good Old Forester. A little less spice.
Yeah, maybe a little
nothing crazy, but nothing crazy. I just wanted to throw it in there.
Yeah, it really stood out. That's for sure.
That was 5th place.
All right, then
I will say you and I have the same order for tonight. The 3, as much as I want to put it above 1, the drinkability and the sweetness in 1 is just crushing it tonight.
Agreed. So hit me with number 4, because that was second. Well, 4th was 4th.
Number 4 is,
let's go,
1990 Wild Turkey 12-year cheesy gold foil.
Which is that the one I said was rare breed-esque?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is,
all right.
but again, this is awesome for squad to hear. That a lot of people will say, if you're going to have one wild turkey product, this is it. And you tasted it. And again, there are some nights where I have it where it comes off a little bit more oaky, but this is one product that I feel like when I bought this, I was drinking this and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm actually not a turkey guy. If this is the epitome of turkey, maybe I'm not a turkey guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. Like, it's good. But it's not legendary good. But I'm really glad to have been able to try it. I enjoyed it. But yeah. I'm feeling good right now. I pegged that one as wild turkey. I pegged 2 as Old Forester. So I've undersold maybe the quality of my bourbon palate right now. So, all right, let's go to number 3, which was number 3. The donut turkey.
So, and like we talked about with proof, this is 114.7. It is the highest proof of them all.
Yeah, I did. I actually just had a little bit left in my glass. That is quite good. I mean, that's a battle. I do think it is less refined for sure than 1 and 5, but that's a solid. I'd take that for sure over the cheesy gold.
On most days,
that 1990. I'm sure there's variance in the cheesy gold foil from year to year, though. I mean, how long they ran that for? What, 4 years? Cheesy gold foil?
I forget, but that is 1990. Well, it had to be more than that because my buddy let me try a 1985, which to me is like levels better than the 1990.
Okay. All right.
I want to say mid 90s is this Kentucky Legend, maybe late 90s. So some of these aren't all old Dusty. But again, on most days, I would tell you that donut of this Kentucky Legend Wild Turkey single barrel is my favorite turkey product on some days. Not tonight.
All right, sample number 1, which was my second favorite.
Sample number 1, again, wild turkey with a 1989 8101.
Wow. Dang. Yeah, that's quite.
It is not a decanter. I debated sending you an 85 decanter, but I just felt like the character in this one was a little bit better, and I didn't want to make the whole flight turkey. Yeah, but I wanted to let you try some of the things that when people say Dusties are older, I feel like a lot of people lean towards the cheesy gold. Donut being one of my favorites, but again, this is just an 8101. However, it you can't really see it, but man, it's seen some stuff. But it had the cork was perfect, the juice is clear, and
dark, man.
8101.
The color on that, just looking through the computer, that looks
it could be tricky where I'm at. It could be tricky where I'm at, but it is very good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, I would not expect just any 101 release to be either the Legend or the cheesy gold foil, but there you have it for both of us tonight. Okay, what's the big one? What did I like the best? What was number 5?
As you probably assumed,
Old Crow Chessman. Yeah,
1969 Old Crow Chessman. Which again, a lot of these, while older, they were not. We did not have 80s decanters. We didn't have 70s decanters. So I could have had some of those, but sometimes they have like that perfuminess, that fragrance that it has on the palate can be so overwhelming. I didn't want to, like, especially with you not having them, I wanted to work you into a few flavors without like bombarding your palate and being like, I don't know, it just all tastes like a bouquet of flowers. 86 proof. So we both had known how viscous this was.
Yeah.
This Old Crow is, I think, 10 years old. This whiskey is 10 years old. 86 proof in one of the more viscous whiskeys I feel like I drink, with a lot of quirkiness. I think the first time I tried it, I didn't even know if I liked it the first time I tried it. I just said, this is weird, man. But it was so intriguing. And Boom. 1969, Old Crow Chessman.
Yeah, definitely took the cake tonight. But I mean, that Wild Turkey 101 from what year was that we had?
Which one?
The Wild Turkey 101.
89.
Yeah, I mean, that was ridiculous. That was ridiculously good for what it was. Like, again, I mean, the Chessman was a level of refined above it, still fantastic. 101.
So
Cheesy gold, quite good. Just punchy.
You try a little bit of old decanter. You got to try 3 different versions of older turkey. And then to see that Old Forester, has just been cranking out the same profile for a while.
Yeah, right. Very reminiscent, for sure. All right. Well, in terms of the podcast, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. So if you're still on the YouTube channel, awesome, great. We got a couple more things to get to. We'll talk a little. We'll try and keep this from going too late because I have work tomorrow, as I'm sure many of you do too. But we'll talk a little MGP and Luxco while I do some craft whiskeys because I have to keep powering through those things. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in to the Entry Proof podcast as we talk about Dusties. It's a big world that we're just scratching the surface on. So I'm sure we will revisit this in the future, try and get a Dusty expert maybe that we can have, maybe contribute some samples and learn us a little bit more about the world of vintage bourbons and American whiskeys. But Brian, thanks for those
recommendations. Absolutely. If you have some recommendations of things that we should be looking after or just things to look into, would love to hear about your experience with Dusties and or things that you found that you think either stack up to some of the things we've had tonight or surpass them or just that we should have on our radar.
That would be great. Yeah, let us know. That would be fantastic. So you can reach out to us on the socials at Entry Proof Podcast on Instagram. And you can follow me at Drew P. Whiskey. You can follow Not Drew at Abandon Bourbon. So stay tuned. We're going to be dropping episodes at least every other week here, and then plenty of content available on YouTube via produced videos and live streams at the Drew P. Whiskey channel. Thanks, squad. Hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week, whatever part of the week you find yourself listening to this. Pour yourself a dram tonight. Enjoy it. Stay healthy, stay safe, and remember to keep it neat.
Absolutely. And I'm going to actually move this part to right before that. But if you all do have any specific questions and you don't want to hit us up on social media, there's a contact us section on the website you can go to. That's entryproofpodcast.com, where you can watch you can listen to our episodes, you can see a little bit of our social feed, and then you can find a way to contact us or subscribe to the mailing list, which we've not done anything with yet, but who knows? Maybe we will. So see you later, squad. While you're pouring, whatever it is you're pouring, I'm going to open it because it is pertinent to tonight.
Yep. So now it's totally informal. Cameron Batko with the super chat. Thanks, dude. Great show. Love the history aspects of your streams. Yeah, man. I mean, we're trying to bring something a little bit different. Like, we can just goof around for sure. And goofing around is fun. It's very enjoyable. But, I'm a big fan of learning stuff. So definitely want to keep that at the forefront of the Drew P. Whiskey channel and the Entry Proof podcast. Brian, what do you got there? I was just rinsing glasses. I'm about to pull out some craft whiskey samples.
Man, this is
you know what?
Appropriate.
Are we good if I stop recording on the H6 then, since the podcast is over? Okay.
That's fine. I will stop recording too, because I just don't have to worry about that.
Now it's just for Nation.
File save. Nation.
Patreon content that they don't have to pay for.
That's right. This is free Patreon content since we don't have a Patreon. All right, guys. So I was really excited about this, that this came out tonight while we were doing this, because I have, look at this.
What is it? I'm excited.
Look at this. I'm trying to put it up against something that's not.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I saw you post about this, or you sent it to me. It's on that dude that looks like black currant.
Take a screenshot of this right here.
I will on the YouTubes, Command Shift 5. Oh, crap. Hold on. That didn't work. Anyway, why don't you take a picture of it and you can send it. We'll post it.
Anyway, this is, I'll let you guys see this. This is decanted 1973 Ezra Brooks 12-year 90 proof.
Wow. How is it so dark? Like, what would cause it to be that dark?
I don't know. It's pretty clean. It's like it's either a little hazy or it's just so dark. I'm gonna open it up.
So every time I've gotten a glimpse of this product, which is twice now, my reaction, like I texted you back immediately. I was like, that looks really dark.
I'm gonna try and see if while we're recording I can this phone out here. There we go. Little style smile. Little post on the stories a little bit. Like I said, I got a picture that has the reveal already of the bottles. I posted the bottles on the same shelf after I put your samples on there. Okay, let's get into this. I have a friend who swears by these Ezras, and for the price too. Again, so I mean, some people,
Yeah, I could have actually bought some of those.
There are people all over the place in terms of price, and so some, what I'm about to say, some people might be like, geez, I would never pay that for a bottle. Totally cool. But with so many products being currently like young, non-age dated, something like that, possibly, you don't know what you're going to get, or it's not that great to have an older pour. This right here shipped to my door was like just a touch over $100 for, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, you really got to know. So just be careful, squad. Like, you really got to know who you're buying from, because we're talking about an open bottle here in a mason jar. So, like, I personally might not be comfortable doing that.
This is it smells good. This yielded and they sent me a video decanting it out. It was kind of like I want to see it come through. This is 24 ounces yielded out of this decanter from 1973. Wow. It's a pretty good yield.
Yeah, real quick. Tom Lynch says, "Is that plumber's tape?" Yeah, that's Teflon tape. That's not food safe. Like Teflon tape, Teflon in your digestive system, generally not great. So I might
generally not great, but maybe making sure that the glass doesn't leak.
Yeah, so if you guys ever send samples, please don't put Teflon tape on it, or I will not drink it. Brian is apparently more dedicated to the art than I am. I mean, they make expandable plastic, like good sealing tapes that aren't Teflon tape. Teflon, again, if you want to read some scary stuff, maybe the alcohol will kill the Teflon. I don't know. I don't know how that works. But all right, we'll let you do your tasting first, and then I'll hit craft whiskeys here. So again, Matt Pletz had given me quite a few. I think 12, and so these are now. Gosh, how many did they send me? Because this is 8, 9, and 11. Oh yeah, so he sent me 12. So this is technically, I don't know, whatever. 3 from him. A big thanks to Matt again for all these craft samples. These look light, I'll say that. Like the transition here from Dusty whiskeys to craft whiskeys may not be fair to the craft whiskeys.
It's definitely got a nose that's more similar to the Chessman.
Did you just knock something over?
Yeah, I knocked my knife down. It's got a little like a little bit more spice, a little less sweet than the Chessman. A lot less sweet. This is like pecan pie compared to this, which is like, it's still kind of buttery, caramely.
Hit us with that power, Doug. What do you got? What are you pulling?
Dude, that is very good. You would have it would have been nice to put that in here again, just to have a different product.
Well, we'll swap some samples here in the
It's so
show.
chewy. I think that's what I love so much is that you have these whiskeys that, like, we know that they put older whiskey in stuff that's age dated, like 10 years, 8 years, whatever.
Course,
But I've every time I drink Dusties, I think I usually am like, I see you say it's 90 proof. That just means a minimum, right? Because these things are just so rich. Lots of richness, little bit funk on the nose. Chewy. It's just really chewy. Good chewy palate. It's
like the chewy.
It's like the perfuminess of this without being white tea mixed with the chewy sweetness of one.
Are you liking it better than that Old Crow right now?
It's hard to say. I don't think it's as complex. But no, I don't think it's as complex. I'd have to sit down with it. I mean, it hasn't opened up as much time either. But, you know, there are some differences. You know, the Old Crow was 10 years stated, whatever that means. This Ezra Brooks is 12 years. The Ezra Brooks is a little bit higher in proof, just 73 versus 69. But what else was I going to say about it? I don't know. Oh, 12 years old. I mean, it's a little older. Whatever that means.
All right, dope. Well, hopefully you're gonna try that. Sorry, I was just bringing up my key that I can open after I taste these. So, nose on craft whiskey number 1, which for me is craft whiskey number 12. It's gonna be hard for me to keep track of these. So 12, super ginny squad. Like if I closed my eyes and smelled this, and you're like, "No, it's whiskey." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's a gin." If I didn't know it looked like a whiskey, I'm telling you, it smells like a gin. Very like juniper, which of course juniper is like the main botanical in gin. The smell's botanical. It doesn't smell spicy. It doesn't smell sweet. It smells purely botanical, which I do not mind. You guys know I like gin, but I don't like gin when it's supposed to be whiskey. It smells like gin. Tastes like gin masquerading as whiskey. I actually kind of like it. This is the hard thing. If I'm assessing it as a whiskey, it's almost certainly a rye. I hope it's a rye. It's got some heat. But yeah, I mean, if I was like drinking that with an ice cube and I thought it was gin, which I will do that periodically, like I like the gin to be cold. So if I can't put it in the freezer, I'll put it over ice. I think I would actually like it. But yeah, again, as a whiskey, it's not really at all what I would expect. Very piney. Might be interesting with a little red wine finishing. Punchy is snot. Very young. It's got to be a rye. Not bad overall. I've had worse. The nice thing about ryes is you can get away with youth more than you can with bourbon because of those heavy herbaceous qualities in a rye that can show up. All right, number 2 smells like a very young bourbon. So I'm getting swimming pool. You get kind of that chlorine.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Pull it up. So swimming pool, grain, new make spirit. Not a lot makes me want to go for the taste on this one, but I'm dedicated to what I'm doing. So I've committed to nation to do this. Ooh, guys. Band-Aids, rubber. I mean, it's pretty rough. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but when something is generally like I'm not feeling it whatsoever, I am not feeling this. This is probably the worst one I've had so far. Yeah, I'm sure there's a reason this is still on Matt's shelf. The nose carries forward to the palate, and I do not want to taste it again.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I figured like there are going to be these craft whiskey experiences, which I have to say I was able to get thanks to Matt again. So Matt's the hero of the evening, and many of you are heroes, but Matt's the hero of the evening. This Polish rye, so it's distilled in Poland, aged in Florida, finished in port wine casks. So this is from Cat's Eye Distillery in Iowa. Their Obtainium series. This is really interesting. So thrilled to find that through this journey. And then what was that? There was one other distillery. Oh crap! Hold on. I actually forget which one. I have too many samples. You have to go back and watch the first craft whiskey one I did. But the very first whiskey, no, the fourth whiskey, because the rye was the first. The fourth whiskey was the Ohio Spirit. It was quite good too. So there have been a few. Also, the Wilderness Trail single barrel I had was nice. The Wilderness Trail 100 proof, I was not vibing on that one as much, but the single barrel was quite good. So yeah, I'm enjoying finding some really interesting products. I figured on this journey there would be ones that I did not vibe with as much. To be expected. All right, number 3 here has a better nose, probably better than the other two when it comes to American whiskey in terms of what I expect. Definitely sweeter. Not a ton of depth, but vanilla and a suggestion of caramel. Tom Lynch, which Tom sent me those samples, I'm pretty sure on that first night. The Middle West wheated barrel strength. I think that is correct. I think you're right. All right, the caramel's coming through on the palate. It's hot. It's very straightforward, not complex, but it's sweet. And trying to decide if I think it's wheated or not. I don't think it's wheated, but low rye for sure. Low rye bourbon, probably barrel strength, probably 6 to 8 years. And hot but sweet, very unoffensive. Vanilla, light caramel, and that's about it. So 3 pretty good, 1 really interesting, rye, very botanical, 2 not good at all. So that is Whiskies, whatever I said, 12 through 14. And let's find out what they were. Okay. So, what in the world is happening right now? So, this one, whiskey number 1 tonight, whiskey number 12, is Breckenridge High Proof Blend, which is supposed to be a bourbon whiskey. I would not have guessed that in a bajillion years. Hold on one second. Got to get this right. So that's whiskey number 8. Yeah, so that is correct. So that's Breckenridge High Proof Blend. Still tastes like a rye to me. It's 105 proof. And that's all the information I have. The next one is sample number 9. And that is Breckenridge Single Barrel. They should have left it in the barrel. Just do not like that one at all. That one was a bummer. And the next one was sample 11, which is for me craft whiskey number 14, and this is encouraging. Boone County weeded. So it was weeded.
Like a 6-year?
Yeah, 6-year single barrel. It's
Cool.
nice. It's nice. That's exciting. Their MGP source stuff was awesome. So that's really encouraging to see that they are doing a great job with their own juice. Yeah, really solid. All right. So we've got a few minutes. We're going late, Brian. If you need to bail, you can bail. But I promised the people a little bit of chat here on this MGP Luxco merger, which when it happened, I don't know how many messages I got. Dude, did you hear about the MGP Luxco merger? Well, yes, I did. I had to read about it because I was at work when I heard about it. Kind of a bathroom break bourbon news check. But here's the banter, So MGP, which is Indiana-based brands, obviously, and they just started doing their own releases a couple years ago with the Remus and Rossville brands. They get into the Kentucky whiskey game. So, Brian, if you had to hypothesize what this means for both MGP and Luxco, again, well, just to recap for folks, Luxco, they make the Rebel Yell brand, Ezra Brooks, the Nicholson, that's a Luxco product. What else? They actually own Everclear. They own the Everclear brand.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had to hypothesize what this means for those brands, those large companies, what comes to your mind?
I mean, I'd like to see, like, we know the MGP's got a lot of old stock.
Yeah.
I'd love to see like some like Ezra Brooks blankety blank blank blank.
Well, they did just release the Ezra Brooks 99, but Lord knows where they actually got the stocks for that. Like,
yeah,
because I mean the rumor has it that the bulk of their buying for eternity has been Heaven Hill supplemented with some Jim Beam. So Ezra Brooks, that brand, the Luxco company, they weren't distilling for the longest time. They had huge contracts with Heaven Hill, good relationships with them, and it seemed like Heaven Hill would contract, distill, and age for Luxco. So most of what you were getting in their brands, like Rebel Yell, Weeded 10-year, that's basically the same stuff as Larceny. Now Heaven Hill's demand grew, the bourbon boom happened, and it seemed like the stocks for Luxco dried up. So they needed some deal, something that would help them sustain their brands. It seems like that's driven them to sell, which is not bad, for the company. Like Fred Minnick said something about like feeling for the Lux family, and maybe they didn't want to sell, but I doubt that's the case. Like in this kind of situation, any sort of merger / acquisition, which apparently involved both cash and stock,
right.
The owning family is paid out. Like they are fine. Like they just got paid. So nobody needs to feel sorry for the Lux family, in my opinion. Like they're sort of setting up the next phase of their life, which is retirement and maybe new businesses in the future. But then they also have stock, they have ownership in MGP of some kind. So they want to see the success continue of the Luxco family of brands, as well as, the growth of MGP, because if Lux and MGP continues to grow, that's good for that family. Now, for us whiskey geeks, it's interesting because a lot of these Kentucky straight bourbon brands that we've experienced through Luxco, now it's a question of, are they going to be filled with Indiana bourbon?
Well, but at the same time, you and I drove when we were driving to BBC, we drove by Lux Row Rickhouses. So
which is a recent development.
So what it also means is, I would assume it means that they now have acquired rickhouses full of aging Kentucky whiskey.
Yeah. I think it's good for MGP that's always been sort of relegated to the Indiana bourbon status, is now that they have a big stake in Kentucky bourbon. So, and I don't know how many barrels that Luxco has that belong to other distilleries or are aging in Heaven Hill or Jim Beam warehouses. They probably still have some there. So, I mean, in terms of like what it means for the Ezra Brooks family of brands, like the old Ezra, I don't know that many people who absolutely love Ezra Brooks Black Label. Like, what's going to happen is the juice going to change. Like, why do you care? Nobody was hoarding Ezra Brooks. Like, it's just not that good. So I wouldn't worry about that. Old Ezra 7, that's not my favorite product either. How do you feel about that Old Ezra 7 barrel strength release?
It's pretty hot to me.
Yeah, hot and funky, like funky nuts. This is at the wrong time of the night to talk about this.
It just has I mean, from when I remember having it, it just was like a piercing heat I couldn't get by. I mean, that's at the same time where like a lot of Elijah Craig barrel proofs too were just so hot. I'm just like, pass. I just don't have time for this.
Yeah, the heat didn't
it, but
he didn't bother me so much in Old Ezra as much as the funky nuts, which that would be a great t-shirt. If you guys want a Droopy Whiskey t-shirt that says hashtag funky nuts, we can probably make that happen. We'll get to it. So yeah, I'm not really worried about the Old Ezra or the Ezra Brooks brand. I think it'll only get better because I think MGP generally does a great job, and if they let their stuff reach an age and then introduce that to the Brooks brand line, it'll be fine. That said, their weeded line of Rebel Yell, so Rebel Yell's the weeded, that came from that Heaven Hill weeded mash bill, which is why Rebel Yell tenure tasted like older Larceny, is interesting because I have never had MGP weeded bourbon. Brian, have you had such things?
I think I probably have, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it tastes like. I've got, I know several people around here that get MGP samples of various recipes that they make it because they're considering buying it for their own kind of brand. So I am sure I have tried it, but actually I might have even tried some yesterday, 2 days ago.
Who?
Okay. Just someone who's supposed to be like buying some barrels to put out under a brand. And just when I was going to look at something or drop something off there, I forget exactly what it was. I had tried. So.
Okay. Well, we'll keep it under, you can tell me off the record. But
NDAs can't talk about that. No, not true.
You got to protect your relationships, protect the connections. So, the bottom line is MGP is not famous for their weeded mash bills. Like what we see is their 2 high rye mash bills show up a lot in the OKI, in the old scouts, the good old scouts, and what shows up in their Remus reserve releases. Like that's the stuff that we all know and have chased. We haven't chased the weeded. So yeah, I'm more curious to see what happens with Rebel Yell. But guys, I gotta imagine that the Luxco brand is probably set with the stocks, like similar stocks to what they had for the next 5 years. Like I don't think we're going to see dramatic changes in product line that weren't already in the works for quite a while. Because like when 2 big companies merge like this, it takes some time to learn to dance and figure out how are we going to use the juice across the portfolio. So while it's a big like business move, it's a huge business move. For whiskey consumers, I don't think you're going to see dramatic changes for quite some time, unless it comes with like special releases. Like Luxco may be able to do more kind of unique special releases now that they might have access to MGP stocks for those. More likely you're just going to see like MGP products get distributed at a higher scale using the well-established Luxco distribution channels, because Ezra Brooks is a huge brand. Like it's not very good, but it's a huge brand that's been around for a long time. MGP does not have huge brands. They just don't. So they'll, I think, ride the coattails of the Luxco connections to further distribution as a first step, and then juice allocation will come secondarily to that.
I mean, was there any information that talked about like who was continuing on or not. I feel like in cases like this, like, sure, maybe Luxco had a couple of nice names under their belt, but again, like older resurrected names, if you will, maybe they'll go from this and create their own craft line from here. Now they've got some money to do so.
Yeah, I mean,
And
because they have stock in
that's-
MGP, I doubt that that's likely. Like, I think that they're probably in this big whiskey game for quite some time to come. And they probably have non-competes also related to the buyout non-compete agreements. But yeah, and if anybody in the chat has any thoughts you guys want to throw down on what this means, bottom line is time is going to tell. It's nothing crazy. It's not like Jim Beam bought Buffalo Trace or something like that. Luxco has been independent for a long time, just kind of stitching it together, I feel like, and doing a pretty good job on the marketing side. And then their stocks ran out, and there's nobody who could really supply what they needed at, maybe Bardstown could have, but then Bardstown is supplying so many other producers that they probably couldn't supply for themselves, all these small independents and Luxco. So Luxco needed a business alliance that would give them the scale of production that they needed. And I think for MGP, whose stock actually crashed last year, that was well documented. MGP needed a pretty rad alliance to help give them guaranteed sales outlets in the years to come. So Luxco made good sense for that, for sure. Well, we got 2 thumbs down tonight, Brian. It was probably your fault.
Shoot, I think it was the tape on this. I didn't see when it came in. At least one of them is the tape on this mason jar.
Yeah, no, it was fun.
Oh,
I enjoyed it.
My phone died, so I can't see. There's that one person who came in and they were making some comments. I thought they were just like a little less experienced, and then there was like, oh, it's just 2 dudes sniffing glasses. I'm out of here. So
yeah, right. I saw that too. Yeah,
I'm sure one of them was from them.
Yeah, like I'm not middle aged. I don't think I'm middle aged at 31, but I mean maybe. But yeah, I mean, like, what else are you supposed to do?
Age, dude, you never know. Never promise, especially if you drink some of this.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? I might die tomorrow. All right, guys. Well, squad, thanks for tuning in, hanging out in the chat. Hope you enjoyed it. It's fun. It's fun avenue to record the podcast and be able to, also chat with y'all dogs, and get 66 thumbs up in contrast to the 2 thumbs down. That'll show them. So, per usual, I'll be dropping a new video on Monday, which I have not developed yet. So if you guys have ideas for either podcast episodes or live stream topics you want us to hit, or droopy whiskey shows, definitely hit us up with those. You can comment on one of the videos, or you can reach out to us on the socials. As we said on the podcast, you can definitely do that by going to Entry Proof Podcast on Instagram, going to Droopy Whiskey on Instagram. Communicate with us that way. I try and respond to every message as I can. Sometimes they kind of flood in. It might take me a little while to get to those, but we'll definitely get to those. And Brian's been quick on the Entry Proof Instagram as well. And you can follow Brian at Abandon Bourbon, which Brian, guys, takes some really dank photos. So you want to see some totally trill whiskey photography, just follow Brian, and it'll be worthwhile.
And incredibly lengthy tasting notes.
yes, and which is not bad. If you want a thorough review, pretty solid articulation of flavor, Brian's your guy. Okay. Jeremy Riley, thanks for that super chat, man. Peace out to you. Embellished Podcast says, if Drew P is middle-aged, then that's a short life, and I'm knocking on heaven's door.
Oh, gosh.
Liberty Not Licensed says, Methuselah Drew, take care of that temple. HS will be residing there a long while. HS, I don't know what HS is. Anyway, it was fun. Brian, again, thanks for those Dusties. Now I got to try and find an Old Crow Chessman. I mean, I think, as I mentioned, I think that's one of the coolest decanters that's out there. And if there was a whiskey that was already in my what I wanted, like if I was gonna buy a Dusty, it would have been an Old Crow decanter. And now that I picked that out, that was number one in the blind, I didn't know. Now it's
that's what's so kind of funny when it comes to the Dusty stuff, though, is because at last year and the year before, Chessmen started to take off in their secondary pricing, so it's a little bit cost prohibitive to get one.
Yeah, it totally is.
This Ezra Brooks is a sixth of the cost. So
that's way better. Yeah, way better. So I'm probably not going to drop the change for an Old Crow Chessman. I'll probably just keep the hustle up for what's out there today, because we long for the past, but I got some dank whiskeys on the shelf behind me that I need to pop soon.
Right.
All right, let's sign off. Tell the people bye, Brian.
Bye, Brian.
Yeah, that was not eloquent at all. Everybody have a good night. Stay healthy, stay safe, and remember to, as you know, keep it neat.
Cheers, guys.